They have a combined 12 years in the National Football League. They combined for 65 career sacks, 232 tackles, 1 Pro Bowl selection, and 1 Employee of the Month award.
That's just a straight shooter with upper management written all over him.
It's Train and Grose on the All AZ Podcast Network.
Welcome in episode 78, Train and Grose. B-Train, Birchenberry, Mike Grose, Sean Cressman. Thanks for tuning in today.
Yeah.
And a lot to get to.
Hey, it's good to see you guys. I hadn't seen you guys in a few weeks.
It's been 3 weeks.
Yeah, man.
I've been on the road.
Yeah.
I've been on the road.
Reunited.
So
it feels so good.
We gathered before the podcast and we pre-gamed.
Yeah.
And I know in the past you've given me the MVP of the show.
Already have it.
Just because I bought in Bosa Donuts, the apple fritters.
Mm-hmm.
You are the real MVP today.
No, I'm going to defer. I'm going to give my award away.
Okay.
To the young lady at Bosa Donuts that helped me. I didn't know she did this.
Yeah.
I asked for the apple fritters, which we all enjoy.
Of course.
And they're healthy because they
It's
do have
apple.
apples in there.
Yeah.
So it's not like we're just eating fried whatever.
we care
we're
about
not
ourselves.
just eating willy-nilly.
Right, exactly. We had apples. She put in garnishes in that beach
Donut holes.
because you busted the box open.
The donut holes.
Donut hole garnishes on top of our apple
I
fritters.
mean, look, the presentation was tremendous.
Right?
And the taste was even better.
So whoever she was, thank you very much.
Big shout out.
She is the show MVP today.
For real, for real.
All right, so you were on a road trip. You drove a total of, 28-ish hours to and from?
About.
Something had to have happened. Anything? No stories whatsoever in 28 hours of driving.
It was a very, very mellow drive back and forth.
Wow.
Drove up, had 10 days in beautiful Laramie, Wyoming. You heard me talk about it.
You didn't see like the world's largest ball of yarn or anything?
Enjoyed it thoroughly.
Nothing?
No. Went the same way both times. We were going to come back through Utah, decided not to. So we did the I-17 out of Dodge, hit the I-40, hook a right at Albuquerque. No, a left at Albuquerque, like Bugs Bunny used to
You knew
say.
you should have made that left at Albuquerque.
And then up through your old stomping grounds.
That's right.
And went through Denver. Spent the night, Father's Day night with Meg, was working a camp in Denver. So
Meg Stoke.
got to hang out with her.
Yeah.
And then straight up through Fort Collins into Laramie. And nothing, I'm serious, nothing
Really?
happened.
That's good, though. That's what
Beautiful sunny drive.
music was good?
Music was good.
How
That's
about
always
the
a
weather?
must.
How about the weather? Any inclement weather while you were on the road?
Not well, it got a little bit of rain in New Mexico.
Okay.
And it rained on us in Laramie, which was beautiful. It was like in the 60s and it was raining, like just a nice rain.
Wow.
Not like a
60s
month.
and rain.
Yeah.
Right? We're over here sweating.
That's
It was
blanket
beautiful.
weather.
Yeah, it was 42 degrees one morning when we woke up in there.
Oof.
Right? It was nice.
It's like 60 degrees difference.
I'm a big fan. I may at some point relocate to Laramie, Wyoming.
Wow.
I might do it. Just might do it.
Just become the mayor, huh?
Whatever it takes, man. But it's a great town, great. I told you, food. I loved it. I had a great time.
So how did you feel about the vegan food the second time around? You did it the first time and you loved it. How was it for you the second time? Was it just as good?
I'm all in.
You're all in.
Yeah. I
Wow.
mean, before I used to be like, I don't want to eat that vegan stuff. Like,
All right.
if I would not have known what I was eating,
You would have swore it was meat.
I would have swore it was meat.
Wow.
And the potatoes that she put with it,
Wow.
the mushroom gravy,
Okay.
E-train.
Really?
Yeah.
It's like
so
that.
Karen found the recipe, so she's going to give it a shot. We'll see. I'll report back. And maybe, just maybe, one of these upcoming times when we gather here at train station to record the podcast, I may, instead of putting apple fritters in the box,
Instead of sugar?
I may put vegan meatloaf in there and see how you guys feel.
That's a big jump. Sugar to vegan meatloaf. Hey, Mom, the meatloaf.
I might not get the MVP that day.
You'll get something.
So much to get to here on episode 78. But before we do that, we do what we do every time. Episode 78. I got two names.
Okay.
And I think I know where you're going on this because I believe we've talked about it on the radio show that we did previously. But two names jump out when you look at number 78 in the National Football League.
All right.
Okay.
Number one, Anthony Munoz.
Oh, gosh. Yes. The gold standard for left tackles
Right.
in the NFL. Yes.
Played against him?
No.
No,
He did not play against
about
I'm
10, 12 years older
before
than
he was.
him. Yeah.
You just-
He was
he's
in
just
those,
a little older.
He
than
played in
me.
those Super Bowls against the Niners, all that kind of stuff.
Well, and he had some
Yeah.
longevity, so you weren't that far.
I wasn't that far off, but I did miss him. I didn't have the pleasure.
And then the other is Bruce Smith.
Oh, gosh, Bruce Smith. All-time leader in career sacks.
200.
200 even.
200.
Played just long enough to get to 200.
Didn't do it Michael Strahan style?
No, he earned his. But I got to give out a tip of the hat shout out to number 78, Tarek Glenn, my teammate. We were drafted the same year by the Indianapolis Colts. He was the first-round pick. I was the third-round pick. So he was able to win a Super Bowl with the Indianapolis Colts 2006 with Peyton and those guys. And so a tip of the hat to my man Tarek Glenn. A very good offensive tackle from Cal, by the way.
There you go.
Yeah.
So that's our choices: Tarek Glenn, Bruce Smith, Anthony Mullins. It's a good list.
It's a great list. I mean, it's a great list.
I understand where you're going.
Yeah.
All right. We recorded a week ago on Wednesday. We're doing this show on a Thursday. It's July 7th. We will jump into the NHL draft, which is underway here in a little bit in the podcast.
Sure, we will.
Logan
Cooley, the third overall pick.
Kind of a big surprise.
By the Arizona Coyotes.
Big surprise.
There you go.
Shane Wright was still on the board, and they passed.
Wow.
There, take that. So we'll get into that in some detail a little bit later on. But we've got to start in college football because the day after we recorded the podcast, two big stories came down. We'll get into the second one later on. College football blows up with a single move or dual move. USC, UCLA.
A joint move.
They leave the Pac-12, founding members of this conference, the Conference of Champions, apparently. They are now members or will be members of the Big Ten coming up in 2 short seasons.
Mike, it really is the end of college football as we've known it.
Yep.
And for some people, the way that they loved it. Because this has become truly just a big money grab. It's really going to become 2 major conferences. And then they're going to separate. It's going to be kind of like European soccer, where you're going to have the 2 leagues that are up here and everybody else is kind of going to be the sub-leagues. And they will pull and pluck from those players and teams will come up every now and again and get an opportunity to play against them. But as far as the national championship is concerned, there's going to be 2 teams or 2 conferences that are going to have those 4 slots if they keep it at 4 slots. Because now that you've done all this realignment, will you keep it at 4 or will you actually expand it? Because now you're talking about conferences with 20-plus teams apiece. And those teams aren't going to all be able to play each other. So how will you truly know who's the conference champion? Because if you don't have an opportunity to beat everybody in your conference, can you really say you're the conference champion?
No, that's a fair point. And let's not fool ourselves. There's one thing that's driving this.
Money.
You hear about the competitive balance.
Must be the money.
It's all the money.
Shout out to Deion Sanders, by the way.
Very well done. All about the money.
Yeah.
And look, USC and UCLA didn't even give their conference a chance to
Not even a heads up.
No. They read about it in the morning paper.
They snuck out in the middle of the night. It was the wham bam, thank you, man.
The moving van was rolling.
Yeah.
And it gives the Big Ten the LA market. It gives the Big Ten the names of UCLA and USC, though the cachet, maybe that's faded.
It's dimmed a little bit. It's dimmed. It hasn't faded, but it's dimmed.
I know you have thoughts about USC and the rivalry between Notre Dame and USC, but they have not been the USC team that you played against.
Yeah.
Certainly. And UCLA has fallen even farther behind USC.
Yeah.
So, again, these are not teams that are competing for Pac-12 championships saying, look, we got to get out of here for any competitive reason. It's the bottom line. And you look at what the revenue numbers are that are shared every year by the conferences.
Yep.
The Pac-12 falls further and further behind all the other conferences, particularly the SEC and the Big Ten.
Mike.
When you got a school like Indiana that is pulling in more money from revenue that I don't want to say they didn't earn it, but because of where they sit.
Correct.
Then if you're USC and UCLA, you have to make this move.
It's a move of necessity, Mike, and the thing about the Pac-12 is they have no visibility in college football right now. You look at the landscape of TV and when games are played on Saturdays or even Thursdays and maybe even Fridays sometimes, the Pac-12 is nowhere to be found. You have to search sub-channels basically to go and find Pac-12 games because they're not on regular TV. They're not on Fox. They're not on ESPN. Those games, those channels are full and littered with SEC and Big Ten teams. And you even have some of the lower or some of the non-Power 5 teams that are getting on TV before you see the Pac-12. And Mike, the thing that is most damning about the Pac-12 is the conference championships. The fact that they had to move to a Friday and they had to share the slot with another conference championship game.
Yeah.
It just lets you know that the Pac-12 has fallen so far down that I don't know if the general public even really cares anymore.
Yeah. No, I think you're exactly right. These numbers, B-Train, are a year old.
Okay.
But if you look at the total number, and you can do the math yourself.
Okay.
If you look at the revenue that each conference was pulling in, these are as of 2021.
Sure.
The Big Ten and the SEC
Dead last in the Power 5.
both pulled in excess of $725 million, each of those conferences, which is then distributed out to the membership.
Yes.
So do the math. Like,
Yeah.
we don't have to do it for you.
No,
'cause
no.
The Pac-12 conference is $225 million below that.
Wow.
And that's, you talk about the Big Ten wants to grab the USC and UCLA for the TV market. Pac-12 has had the Los Angeles TV market.
And couldn't do anything
and
with
they
it.
were still $225 million below that threshold, and those numbers go up each and every year.
But Mike, we've talked about the LA market. LA does not care about sports. If it's not the Lakers,
Right.
and it's not really a good USC team, they really don't care.
Well, I get that, but I also think that it matters at the margins, if that makes sense. Like if you are able to put those teams into your package. And I completely agree with you, because I think the point you're making, the last 10 years at least, UCLA and USC are not moving the needle from a rating
At all.
standpoint, particularly in the LA market.
Right.
But you buy the LA market by getting these two teams. You buy those fan bases, and I think that is what these conferences are doing. And it becomes a survival, an arms race, whatever you want to call it. And now the question is, what's next?
Yeah.
The question is, what's next? And we ran a poll,
Yep.
shameless plug, at Train and Grose,
That's right.
asking the question about your alma mater, Notre Dame.
That's right.
And again, you and I have had this conversation for years, all the way back to the radio show days. And we would say, what is Notre Dame going to do? And I would say, B-Train, they need to join the Big Ten. And you'd be like, man, they do not.
They would give up Catholicism before they give up
That
their
was the line.
independence.
You have the Notre Dame Broadcast Network.
They had
Broadcast
NBC all
again.
to themselves.
All to
All that
themselves.
money. They were not sharing that money.
So that was old news.
Sure.
You look at Notre Dame now, they have a decision to make, because in this landscape, you cannot afford, literally and figuratively, to go at it as an independent, which Notre Dame is right now.
Mike, it's not a decision. It's a choice. You got a choice. You're either going to go to the SEC or you're going to go to the Big Ten. It's not about being an independent anymore. It's about which conference makes the most sense. And for me, I think the Big Ten makes all the sense in the world. They've ducked and dodged the Big Ten for years. And from a geographic standpoint, it makes all the sense in the world, because you've got two in-state rivals built in.
Yeah.
Indiana and Purdue. They're right in the same state with you. So geographically, it makes all the sense in the world. When I was a freshman, we played the Michigans. We played Michigan State. We played Purdue. So we actually traveled to some of those games by bus, Mike, because they're so close.
Yeah.
So to think that you would bypass all of those teams that are right there under your nose, hello, Pac-12, to go somewhere else to follow the money, don't try to sell me on something other than, hey, we took the best deal that was going to lace our pockets and keep us afloat the most or the longest.
Yeah, I agree with you. And selfishly, I've been angling for it for years, but I think it makes sense. And as I said a moment ago, all these decisions are being made, driven by football. Let's not kid ourselves. But underneath all that, these athletic departments have big, sometimes up to 20, 25 other programs that are impacted by that. And we said that, like, what are you going to do when you're Rutgers and UCLA and you got to play a soccer match on a Wednesday afternoon in wherever,
whichever.
where the hell ever Rutgers is.
If Rutgers has to go to UCLA or UCLA has to go to Rutgers on a Wednesday, when do they get back to school, Mike? When do they get back to what they're supposed to be doing?
And then you flip the script with Notre Dame.
Yes.
You're right there. Bus trips all around for virtually all your sports.
It makes all the sense in the
Your
world.
soccer teams can bus every place in the Big Ten.
Save a little money, put a little bit more into the gear and all of the equipment and all that other stuff. So that makes all the sense in the world. But, Mike, this really is a football. This is a football move. This isn't about the other sports. This is about football solely. And if you're Notre Dame, you're going to have to really do some real finessing with the ACC because they just signed that deal with the ACC.
Yeah.
And now you're going to have to back out of there and give some of that money back for joining the ACC and saying, hey, if our football team goes to the Big Ten, you can't have the other teams playing in the ACC. That doesn't make any sense.
No, totally agree. And if the Big Ten got $750 some odd million 2 years ago without USC, without UCLA, and potentially Notre Dame,
what are they going to get with
that?
them?
Goes well over $1 billion.
That's
if you
right.
drop those in, plus whatever else you want.
That's right.
Apparently, they're interested in North Carolina.
Yes.
And perhaps some other teams. So we'll see what happens there. Locally, this is going to be really interesting. And one of the things that was always, I think, assumed is that state schools would stay with state schools. Last time, not the most recently, but the last time Oklahoma thought about bolting out of the Big 12, the state legislature said, wherever you go, take a little brother with you.
Right.
You have to take Oklahoma State.
Yep.
I think they talked about the Pac-12 at one point.
Right.
Whatever it was. You need to take little brother with you.
No.
Those days are gone. So the question here locally is, if you're the athletic director down in Tucson, or if you're the athletic director over in Tempe, and Sean, I'd love to know your thoughts on this. Are you in communication with your counterpart at the respective school, saying, let's get the best deal for us, or is this every man for himself, or every school for himself? And is there a possibility? Could you see the athletic departments at ASU and the U of A split and not in the same conference when the dust settles?
I think you have a conversation, right? But ultimately, it's about you. I mean, you can still keep them on your schedule. You know what I mean? You can still play the game. I mean, how often are they in competition within the standings of the Pac-12 South anyway?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So you can still play the game. The rivalry doesn't go anywhere. I think you got to do what's best for you in your institution.
But think about this, though. You think about those teams, and they have to play each other. Texas and A&M did not play each other for the last 4 or 5 years because UT was already in the Big 12 and Texas A&M was in the SEC. So you would think those in-state rivalries would maintain, but they did not. And there are scenarios that I could think of where Arizona and Arizona State do not play. If Arizona State gets aligned with the Oregons, the Stanfords, the Washingtons, and all the other teams, the Washington States, and U of A is like, we're not really feeling it. I mean, at some point, there's going to be some sort of pettiness. There's going to be some resentment there.
Right.
And there's going to be some hard feelings and some hurt feelings. And I could absolutely see it because I've already seen it. I saw it in my home state in Texas. When Texas and Texas A&M decided to not play each other, that was over hurt feelings. That was over teams being upset that they were not in the same conference, even though they seemed to go together like peanut butter and jelly. But it actually did not go that way. It had the opposite effect. And now you have Texas and Texas A&M in the same conference, but A&M is kind of giving UT the side eye. Like, what are you doing over here?
And the ASU U of A thing is kind of interesting because in the fall, right? It's ASU's looking down south, going, well, what can you do for me? But then winter rolls around and it's basketball season, and U of A is looking north at us, going, well, what the hell can you do for me?
Yeah.
Right.
So it's kind of an interesting dynamic. Like you don't really feel hitched to them unless it's the correct season for you to feel hitched to them. If that makes any sense.
But make no mistake, this is all football. This is purely 100%. Football moves being made, and everybody else is just going to have to go along because football is the moneymaker for most of these programs.
Yeah, no, that will be interesting to see. I've seen different things written, and one of them is they call it the four corners option, where the Big 12 comes in here and grabs Colorado, Utah, or grabs back Colorado, I guess. Yeah. Utah, Arizona State, and kind of keeps that block together.
But then what does Oregon and Stanford and Washington State do?
That's the every school for themselves.
Jeez.
And I'll be really interested to say, and I said this before we started recruiting, the two to keep an eye on. Because, again, the dust will settle at some point, and the music will be over, and the realignment will be done.
Musical chairs?
Washington State and Oregon State. Because you hear about, here's the prize. You want to go get Washington. You want to go get Oregon because of what those programs are and what they represent. And you hear the four corners option where they kind of keep those schools together as a block. Nobody's talking about Washington State and Oregon State.
No, they don't care.
No.
They hadn't done much.
At all. So we'll see, but, I mean, it's sad,
Mike. It's sad.
I was going to say it's interesting.
It's sad.
It's
You love those rivalries. I mean, you love those games. I mean, you've grown accustomed to seeing those games at certain times of the year, and to think that they're not going to be there potentially, and it's all about money and greed. It makes me sad.
Yeah. No, it is. And whatever you think, I said interesting, you said sad. Whatever you think, it's never going to be the same.
Well, let me ask you that. How do you look at it? Because a lot of people look at this as an exciting time for college football.
How?
Right? Like the game is progressing into something where, it's more of a national type game.
It's the haves and have-nots.
Exactly right. I think in a lot of ways, people look at this as well, not only on the national level, but as on the regional level. Like, as a Sun Devil, even though they've basically owned us for the majority of my life, I'd hate to not play USC anymore. That sucks. You know what I mean? Not following the Trojans, not following UCLA, not going to the Rose Bowl. And what the hell happens to the Rose Bowl? Who's the affiliates of the Rose Bowl anymore?
I mean...
You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of fallout here that isn't on a regional level, not necessarily a national level. And I agree with you. I think this whole thing sucks.
Yeah.
Even though the Pac-12 is as down as it is,
yeah.
It's still the conference of football that I have watched since I could pick up a ball. And to me, it sucks.
Well, the thing about the Rose Bowl specifically, I think it can stay alive because it's one of those J1 bowl games.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it's in the rotation for the national championship game at times.
But it was always Pac-12 and Big Ten.
The Rose Bowl, but I'm saying the venue itself,
yes.
it could still be in play for the national football playoff or the college football playoff, I should say, because it's still the Rose Bowl. Everybody still respects it as one of those major bowl games that college football could go to and actually play a championship game in that stadium.
Yeah, I agree. I think there is a place for the bowls, and they will be part of that. But to your point, growing up in Michigan, the goal always was
Get to the Rose
Bo
Bowl.
and Woody.
I'll tell you this.
And you got pictures of both those guys with the roses.
Absolutely.
I've never been to the bowl. I've never been to the Rose Bowl.
The game?
But I've traveled to the Rose Bowl Stadium multiple times in Pasadena with the Sun Devils. And when you walk on that field, you just get goosebumps. And for that to not be a part of the Sun Devils and the Pac-12, and it's just, to me, I guess I'm more of a regional type guy than a national type view of the game, and to me it just sucks.
Well, and there has been, once the whole college football took off, the playoffs took off, there have been matchups already in the Rose Bowl which weren't
traditional,
which were not Big Ten, Pac-12. Right. Notre Dame played there a couple years ago.
Yep.
So there is some precedent already.
Yep.
And it is wrapped around.
I mean, the U of A, no, they haven't.
College football
they've never
playoffs.
played in that game. Sorry.
Wow. Wow. The proverbial shot. Never graduate.
Shot across the bow.
Never graduate. Never, ever graduate.
So, again, this story, in many respects, is still being written. And, again, I started to say sad, interesting, but it's coming. And, you got this year coming up and next. After that, who knows? Because, these conference moves don't take place immediately. I guess
Mike,
savor it while you got it.
Yeah, so I look at some of these schools, and it's like, if you're a kid that has aspirations of playing in a national championship game, some of the schools are going to eliminate themselves, because if they're not in those two teams or those two conferences, they got absolutely no shot of playing for a national championship. You're basically just playing out a season to get some recognition and to get some exposure.
How many more UCFs are there going to be now? Cincinnati's.
None.
Where you're
there will be none.
But I'm getting at, like, Cincinnati fought their way in, right? But UCF was always on the outside looking in. Boise State. There's going to be a lot more of those teams that just don't have the path to climb anymore.
They're not going to they're going to close that path off.
They're not going to have. That's what I'm saying. They're not going to have. Right now, you've got you can have the crazy, unforeseen Cinderella story come out if you're playing in a quote unquote Power 5 because you've got the path, right? Mm-hmm. Well, this whole change to college football is going to eliminate that path for dozens of teams.
I mean, just think about the Fiesta Bowl. You've had UConn playing the Fiesta Bowl, right? You've had Boise State playing the Fiesta Bowl at times. Those teams have absolutely no shot going forward.
Well, I would say when this all happens in the next couple of years, if you are not in the Big 12, whatever the current conferences are called, this may change.
The Big 10 or the SEC.
Right, but if you're not in the Big 12, if you're not in the Pac-12, if you're not in the ACC, Big 10, or SEC, you're out.
Done.
So your hope right now, because I think the Big 12 expanded, and I believe Boise and BYU are on the way to the Big 12. So they might have a seat at the table.
Maybe.
But if you're Central Florida and you're stuck in the AAC,
Cincinnati,
you're out. You're out.
It's that simple. It's that simple.
John Wilner, who writes a column called the Pac-12 Hotline, he was talking about what's the future for the Pac-12. The two we know, split it up, ACC, Big 12, take the leftovers, or hold your ground. The remaining teams, Pac-10 now, right? The remaining teams say, let's go out and find teams to add to this.
Yep.
He said the two that he could think that are possibilities right now based on all the movement are San Diego State and SMU.
Mike,
That's not going to do it.
No, but Mike, think about this as far as the ACC is concerned. If you're not Clemson and you're not Miami, you should be very, very nervous right now. Because if when all the dust settles and there's going to be purging of major big conferences, they're going to purge Clemson and they're going to purge Miami because those are two brand names.
And North Carolina, I think, is in play.
For basketball.
I think the Big Ten is still holding on to, because if you read their press release, they're still holding on to vestiges of the 1950s. Major research institution, all this, okay, fine, whatever.
No.
But that's where the North Carolina came in, because North Carolina fits the bill with a lot of that. But North Carolina also gives them the Charlotte TV market. Let's not kid ourselves. And that's what it is.
I mean, yeah.
But you're right. And again, if you're the president and athletic director at Miami, what are you thinking right now?
I'm on the phone right now with
Where
somebody.
do I go?
I'm on the phone right now with the SEC.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right now, I'm on the phone.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'm like, hey, you guys need a trip down here. Let's talk.
Yeah, absolutely, you do.
You need a couple nights at the W on South Beach. What? Let's talk. Let's really talk. Let's talk turkey.
Yep.
Because that's the only thing that's really moving the needle right now.
All right, this story's going to keep on rolling, and we'll stay on it, and we'll keep an eye on the Fighting Irish. The poll's up there for a couple more days. Go vote at Training Grose and let us know what you think. All right, on the other side, NBA news and notes coming up.
Train and Grose.
Thank you to our friends at Bosa Donuts.
This show brought to you by Bosa.
We ate a healthy dinner. All had at least a full apple.
Yeah, they say an apple a day.
So we're all good.
We did good.
I feel like that guy. What was that? Poison? Who? Dr. Feelgood. Whose song is that?
That would be
Rat?
no.
Poison?
It would be
Motley Crue.
Motley Crue. Thank you.
Crue?
Yes.
Motley Crue.
Sorry, Dr. Feelgood.
How do I know that of the three of us?
It was on the tip of my tongue and it couldn't get it out.
Wow.
They beat me to it.
B-Train was living clean until July 4th, and I just gave him two apple
They
fritters.
call you an enabler.
Yeah. I mean, I can just
B-Train off the wagon.
Yeah, I'm already sleeping.
All right, NBA news and notes, and we'll start local. And in reflecting on the last couple podcasts,
Yeah.
I'm going to be honest. You guys have been pretty negative when it comes to kind of some of the stuff that's going on. You've kind of bringing me down talking about DeAndre Ayton. You took away his nickname and being negative. So I'm going to start positive when it comes to the Phoenix Suns.
Okay.
Devin Booker signs the max extension. And, you look at a guy who...
Surprise.
Right, well, did all the right things. Because remember the story when the Suns were going through those years where he never went to the playoffs? They're like, what are you going to do? You got to keep this guy here. He deserves to go play on the big stage and that sort of thing.
Sure.
He did his time.
Yep.
He worked within the system as it was laid out, and he's been rewarded for that by signing the max extension.
Yep.
The super max, I think
Good
they
for
call
him.
it in the National Basketball Association. That I say, when you look at it, and there's a lot of, again, the whole DeAndre Ayton thing we'll get to in a minute. Mm-hmm. Good for Devin Booker, good for the Phoenix Suns. This is a story that should make you feel good.
You had to do it, Mike. You had to do something because all of the press about the Phoenix Suns was not good, aside from Devin Booker. And I think for the owner, I think for the head coach, I think for the players on that roster, they needed a good, feel-good story. to give them some sort of hope and some sort of positivity as they're in the midst of the offseason. Because, Mike, other than that, it's been disaster. Like, that Game 7 cloud has been hung over this team and this organization for a good 2 months now. And they are not getting away from that anytime soon.
No.
They're not getting away from that until they tip the balls off in October, which they still may have to answer some questions about that game because it was that ugly, Mike.
It was, and there's a lot of other things swirling around this team,
Yes.
to your point. But just to confirm the numbers, and you hear the term generational wealth.
Yeah.
4 years, 225.
Gotta love it.
That's $250
Billion
million.
Now think
That's-
about this. Steph Curry's gotten 2 of those.
Yeah. Yeah.
And nobody's balked at it because Steph Curry is Steph Curry.
Where does James Harden fit now in the list
Oh, he's
of
not getting
players? No, I'm talking about the players that are max contract players. Like you look at it, you mentioned, and this again.
He's not getting the max, Mike. Not in Philly.
No. I'm sorry, James. I meant Devin Booker. I misspoke. We'll come back to James Harden. He's on my list.
Oh, okay.
When you look at Devin Booker, now that he's gotten that
I got
money,
you.
excuse me.
I got you.
I was wondering why you're making that hard left turn there.
That was a pump the brakes on me, man.
Yeah.
Find out what the hell I did. I was like one of them Sun City residents driving down the road like,
Wow. Telling that story while you got the pink suit on.
I'll just go ahead and do what we're all thinking.
So where does Devin Booker fit now in that list of because that's your list of the best players in the NBA or the people that thought were going to, because if you've got Steph Curry and you're 100% right, I'll give you John Wall. John Wall's playing on a max deal right now.
Bradley Beal's playing the max. He's just got the max deal. And you have to look at Bradley Beal and say, what other choice does he have?
Right.
Where else is he going to go? You might as well take the money in Washington because you're not going to be able to do what you do anywhere else other than where you are right now. So I understand Bradley Beal, but his almost feels a little dirty compared to a Devin Booker. Like Bradley Beal almost feels like I'm just taking what I can get. I'm an opportunist. If they're going to offer me, I'm going to take it.
Got to take it.
I know I'm not going to really win here. I know they're not really doing anything to surround me with players that can help me contend in the Eastern Conference. But if I can't contend, I might as well get paid. It feels a little dirty, like it feels a little tainted, his max deal. But when you talk about Devin Booker, you talk about a guy that has been the face of the franchise for a very long time.
Yep.
A guy that at once upon a time scored 70 points in a game and was the only bright spot for the Phoenix Suns, which is, no pun intended, to a certain degree.
I see what you did there.
Thank you very much. I'll be here all week. But when I look at Devin Booker face value, I think he's a tremendous player. I think that he has elevated his game to where he is one of the top players in the NBA. Of course, there were a few people that were like, well, he only got voted in as an alternate because somebody decided not to go. I think you look at what he was able to do in the finals, and I think you look at what he's been able to do the last 2 years as a whole.
Right.
And I think he has taken his game to a whole nother level. And it's one of those stories where you just ask yourself, man, how did he make such a meteoric rise? Because this was a guy that didn't start a single game in college, Mike. He was on a team in Kentucky that was so loaded, he came off the bench with Karl Anthony Towns and the like. I mean, for him to not even be a starter on his college basketball team to now be a face of a team getting a max deal and totally deserving it and nobody questioning it or second guessing it, I think you give him a lot of credit because he's put in the time in the gym. He's put in the work by himself to make himself one of those type players who deserves that type of contract. And I think it's just, hey, move it along. Nothing to see here now.
Yeah. And I agree with you. And I know in the back of people's mind there's always that concern, but there's nothing in Devin Booker's history or past that we've seen that would lead you to believe that now he's got the money, he's going to go to cruise control.
No.
Right?
And that he's going to do anything to get himself in trouble off the court.
Oh, no. Oh, no.
Nothing.
I mean, he dumped the Kardashians, so.
Oh, I think that was
good.
a plus.
I do too.
Well, but I digress. We'll save that for another podcast.
So, anyways, John Wall is your second highest paid player in the NBA this year.
Average, but ooh,
44.
Ooh.
And Russell Westbrook right behind him.
Ugh.
So that's always in the back of your mind, though, right? I mean, I don't think it's going to happen, but
doesn't Russ make 47?
they had him at 44 last year. I don't know what he's making this year.
I think it's 47. I think he signed or opted in for, which, I don't know how anybody would have to think about opting in the $47 million. It's like, where do I need to sign? Like, as soon as the season's over, like, you got the contract ready, so I can go ahead and sign this, because that's $47 million that last year of my deal, I'm going to get every penny of that. Thank you so very much.
Right. All right, we got to go to it.
Okay.
The other news that broke last week while we were wrapping up the podcast.
There you go.
Kevin Durant decided that he wants out of New Jersey, and he's got two places he wants to go. Number one is right here in Phoenix, Arizona. Wants to play with Devin Booker and Chris Paul. The other option that he has is, or in his mind he has, is Miami. He wants to play with the Heat, with Jimmy Butler and crew. But here's the thing. He's kind of alluded to the fact that he wants to play with the rosters such as they are. Like he doesn't want the roster blown up to accommodate him. And I'm looking at him saying,
are you serious?
In what universe is this going to happen? Because there's reports out, and again, take it with a grain of salt, what it's going to take to get
Kevin Durant
to Phoenix.
Anywhere.
The only two guys that are going to be left that are
Chris Paul
and Devin Booker.
That's it. That's the list.
Yeah.
Everybody else is going to be gone.
And the Nets, they went on record saying they want all-star caliber player in return.
Other than Devin Booker and Chris Paul, there is none. There is none.
Read between the lines. They're not interested in your sign and trade with DA. And I was driving in listening to the flagship station. So
we're not going to call him DA. DeAndre Ayton.
Thank you.
I
was driving in listening to the flagship station, give credit where credit's due. And the concern now is Indiana is prepared to offer DeAndre Ayton the max deal. And if that happens...
You said concern.
You lose a bargaining chip with the Nets if that happens.
But the Nets have already said, as you mentioned,
they don't want him.
I know they don't want him, but if he brokers his own deal, it'd be better if the Suns brokered a three-way deal.
There you go. That's the only way.
As opposed to DeAndre saying,
correct.
Here we are.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
but what are the Pacers going to give you that's going to be a chip big enough to be in play for a Kevin Durant?
Nothing.
You know what I mean? And so it's.
So how does this work?
I don't think it does.
I don't think it works in Phoenix.
DeAndre Ayton will not be here apparently.
All right, I'm gonna burn a pump the brakes topic here.
I went and did it, didn't I?
No, listen, you didn't do it. Obviously, this topic was going to come up, and I just kind of want to make this point. Kevin Durant as well. He's Kevin Durant. He's one of the greatest players of this generation, right? I'm not knocking that at all.
But he's 34.
We're talking about a man who's 34 years old, going into year 16, who's on Team 4 in the last 7 years.
He's a runner. He's a track star. My man Shannon Sharp said.
Yeah, and let me ask you this. Kevin Durant, James Harden, Kyrie Irving. Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, Chris Paul. Who do you think is more likely to win a championship if you only have those big three? I can tell you it's not. It's not Kevin Durant, Chris Paul, and Devin Booker. And guess what? The other one didn't get it done in the Eastern Conference last year. So the problem with the Kevin Durant trade is, A, what you're going to have to give up. Right now, the Phoenix Suns, James Jones and company, have done a phenomenal job of building a roster, right? It's almost not quite to the extent, but very similar to what the Golden State Warriors did, where they built it through the NBA draft. They home grew this.
And
you look at the Mikal Bridges of the world and so forth. This Phoenix Suns team, they've done a great job of building this roster. Exactly right. You're going to give that up for a win right now or nothing prospect. I know it's Kevin Durant. It's Kevin Durant. When you can get a KD, you damn sure try. But you also have to understand what that means. It means you better win right damn now. And let's also not leave out the fact that your owner has not been somebody you can rely on to pay the luxury tax. So if you're paying a big contract to Devin Booker, who you just did, Kevin Durant's not going to be cheap, and Chris Paul ain't cheap either.
But Kevin Durant already has a contract.
Correct, but that's taking up salary cap. So how are you building a roster around those three unless you're willing to get out that checkbook and pay that luxury tax? I'm not saying don't do it. I'm just saying understand you're taking your window that right now is a open window for you to be a competitive basketball team and win an NBA title, and you're taking that window and you're bringing it down to a crack. Because when Chris Paul's done, when Kevin Durant, like you mentioned, 34 years old, year 16,
Yep.
What's going to be left? Booker and a bunch of dudes, just like he had 3 years ago.
But here's the thing, though. Even if you make this deal for Kevin Durant, it doesn't put the Phoenix Suns at the top of the Western
I would
Conference.
agree with that.
Because you've got
That was the question that was going to be in Pump
the
the Brakes,
Clippers are a team they're coming. The Denver Nuggets, when they get healthy, they are coming.
Oh, and who just won the NBA title?
That would be the Golden State Warriors.
And they're
coming,
in the
and
West.
they've got help on the way.
I would say that
Kuminga,
they're not going.
yeah. What I see what you did there.
Yeah.
Well done, right there. You look at the young guns that Golden State has; they're not going anywhere. They're about to reload, and I think if you are to realistically put the Suns in the pecking order of the Western Conference right now, I don't put them no higher than 4.
I know Suns fans a lot of fans will be devastated if this trade doesn't happen.
They can be devastated all they want.
It's not the end of the world.
I can't believe I'm about to say this, but if I'm Robert Sarver, I don't know if I do this deal because it doesn't guarantee me a slam dunk chance of winning a championship.
It doesn't.
I'm not going to get the Western Conference guaranteed. It's not going to be gift wrapped to me because I'm looking at a couple other teams that have as much weaponry as I'm going to have at my disposal, and those guys actually have more solid players around them than what I would have if I were to make this deal.
Yeah, it would put you in the ultimate win now mode. You better win in the next 2
But
years.
how could you win if you've just got 3 guys and a bunch of other players?
Right. And I agree with you.
That's not the formula for success.
And I agree
Hello,
with you.
Brooklyn. We just saw this last year
Because they were
Brooklyn.
supposed to be there.
They were the exact team that the Phoenix Suns are trying to be if they make this deal.
They were half a shoe size. Remember that? The 3-pointer?
Yeah. If he wore 13 instead of a 14, they'd have beat the Milwaukee Bucks.
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, the last 2 years, Kevin Durant has played in 90 games combined. So, and that doesn't include obviously the year that he had to take off. So you
sound like you said you didn't want to be negative coming into this segment, and damn, look where I took the wheel and drove us.
Well, I was going to say mine's I just lay the numbers out, let you I report, you decide. But you look at if you clean out this roster.
It's a lateral move.
It really.
I don't even know if it is.
Yeah.
It might be a step back.
It puts you. Listen, it improves your.
I mean, it's Kevin Durant. We're not going to disrespect him.
That's what I'm saying.
It's a lateral move. We'll just say lateral, not a step. A lateral move. A lateral. We got to put some respect on Kevin Durant.
It's kind of it improves your.
It's a numbers game.
It improves the first 7 minutes of your basketball game. It improves your starting lineup. Does it improve your team?
Yeah, it does, because now you've got a guy that you can dump the ball to and say, "Hey, take me."
I need a bucket, get one. You got 2 guys now. So
Devin Booker's he's still in the process. He's a great player. He'll get you 25, but I don't know about just giving him the ball and get out of the way. I don't know about that just yet. Not just yet.
Fair.
He's getting there.
It's fair.
He's getting there.
It's fair.
But Kevin Durant is that guy.
He's that guy. Yeah.
You give him the ball, get out of the way.
He's that guy. Yeah.
Just get the ball to Kevin.
And he's done it on the
make
highest
happen.
level.
Yeah,
NBA Finals.
And I'm not even going to pretend and I know there's websites where you can go figure it out. The other thing you have to do, you can talk about the players and the talent, but you have to make the numbers work.
Of course.
Like you can't just say,
That's
"Hey,
what I
I'll
said.
take Kevin Durant. Here's a draft pick and whatever." And so
Some cash.
You're right. So even if you did that, again, if you have this team understand exactly what you're saying about Kevin Durant, and I think it's where you were going. If you lose Mikal Bridges, you lose Cam Johnson.
The future's gone.
The future's gone, but I would say
now.
Right now is gone.
Because you're not as complete.
Yeah.
The reason the Suns went all the way to the NBA Finals a couple years ago.
The depth that they
And the
had.
reason they won the record number of games this past season, and granted it was a terrible disappointment against the Maverick, was the depth and the roster constitution that James Jones put together.
And the unity. And the unity that these guys
chemistry,
have. The
all of
chemistry,
it.
yes.
That's all of it. And so to have that ripped apart, taking nothing away from Kevin Durant's talent and everything he brings, there's no guarantee that you recapture that by adding him to this roster.
And there's no guarantee that Kevin Durant gets along with Monty Williams, because if you remember in Golden State, those 3 years, they get to the NBA Finals, but it came out that he and Steve Kerr did not get along. How in the world do you not get along with Steve Kerr? Could be one of the nicest men I've ever met in my life.
Right.
And for Kevin Durant not to get along with him, and then you go to a Monty Williams, a guy that maybe he's going to look at and be like, who's this guy? Why does he think he can coach me? Yeah. Because everybody wants to think that Kyrie Irving was the only one balking at coaches in Brooklyn. I don't think so. I think Kevin Durant kind of balked at the coach as well. And Steve Nash, who we love here in Phoenix, I don't think he was all too impressed with the coaching staff and the coaching decisions that he was making. So if you're not a Greg Popovich, if you're not a Steve Kerr, is Kevin Durant going to listen to this guy? Because, yes, he can say he's the coach of the year, but he's going to be like, well, what have you won? Because he's got 2 of those things to show, and he's got 2 of those MVPs in the finals to show for. So at 34 and 16 years in the league, there's going to be a certain air and a certain arrogance that comes with that. Because he's already given you the soundbite, you know who I am. I'm Kevin Durant.
Right.
So we already know he has that in the back of his mind.
The flip side of this is, what if the Nets, again, they apparently have set a very high asking price, which is their right. And what
Which I would too, man.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
But what happens if they say, no? Does Kevin Durant, does he miss games? Does he sit out and say, you know what, I asked to be traded away from this. You did not grant that, so I will, don't pay me, I'm not playing.
Mike, Kevin Durant is going to get out of Brooklyn. Make no mistake about it.
Is the round robin of superstars in the NBA good for the game or not? I can't decide on this. Because
Okay,
it's
first of all-
it makes the offseason exciting, right? But it's odd. I mean,
Basketball above every sport
Is a
for
player's
years
game.
is a players-driven league. It always has been. You think Magic Johnson didn't have that kind of cachet with the Lakers? You think Michael Jordan didn't have that cachet with the Chicago Bulls?
No, I know.
Patrick Ewing with the New York Knicks?
but I'm just saying from a fan's perspective, and you're seeing the stars continuously move. Is that? I'm not saying they shouldn't have the cachet. I'm just saying it's 4th team in 7 years for arguably the second best player in the game. 4th team in 7 years. LeBron James it's now on what, team 4?
Yeah.
Is that good?
He went back to
He did. He went back.
Cleveland.
Yeah. But I mean, is that good? I mean, your stars.
I don't like it.
The Steph Currys and now the Devin Bookers of the world. We can, especially with this new extension, you can throw him in
Okay.
there. That's the rarity in the game now.
I got you. I played for 3 different teams in my career. Mm-hmm. I wish that I could have only played for one. I would have loved to have played my career in one team or with one team. But you look at football, football is not that sport.
Yep.
Nope.
Basketball is not that sport. If Michael Jordan can play for 2 different teams, certainly Kevin Durant can play for 2 different
No
teams.
sports are that way anymore.
And I'm not
Wayne
saying
Gretzky.
I'm not saying the 2 different the 2 different teams. I'm not. I mean, that happened. Everybody. It's going to be very rare. I think I saw a stat that the last 2 number 1 overall picks to finish their career in the NFL with the team that drafted them was Andrew Luck and Jamarcus Russell. So it just doesn't happen, right? I'm not arguing that, but in the NBA, though, it is a very more frequent circumstance where a superstar ends up somewhere else.
So also think about basketball. Basketball is the only sport really where you have an AAU influence in the NFL or in the NBA. Because now you talk about a LeBron James whose best friend is D Wade,
Sure.
whose best friend is Chris Paul,
Yeah.
who understands what Chris Bosh can bring to him as far as a spot shooter. Mm-hmm. I think for him and those players, they understand that sometimes player empowerment means we can team up and go do something special.
Yeah.
Going back to Kevin Garnett, even in Boston with Ray Allen and Paul Pierce, now that was management driven. Danny Ainge pulls that off and makes a deal with Kevin McHale. The hey old buddy,
Wink, wink,
old
nod, nod.
teammate.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Hook it up. But that's what really started all this.
Yeah.
When Kevin McHale and Danny Ainge made that move, LeBron saw that he couldn't beat the Celtics, so he had to go team up. Kevin Durant saw that he couldn't beat LeBron, so he teamed up. Now you're seeing all these other big-time players. If they don't feel like they can beat another guy that's established, i.e. Golden State, you don't think they're going to start trying to form alliances with some of their boys around the league?
I want to go back to the Nets question and ask,
Go ahead.
what are the possibility that Kevin Durant's playing for the Nets opening night whenever
He's not
that
playing
is
for
this
the.
fall?
He's not playing. 0%.
All right, so I'll ask this: who's a better player? Who would you rather have, Rudy Gobert or Kevin Durant?
Kevin Durant.
Kevin Durant.
The Utah Jazz received 4 first-round draft picks and 3 players for Rudy Gobert. So if I'm the Nets, that's what I'm looking at from the Suns, the Heat, whoever it is.
But they also know that Utah got fleeced, or that the Timberwolves got fleeced in that deal.
But the market has been set. Like, if if you get anything substantially less than that.
You can have outliers, Mike. I think they're going to look at that as an outlier. I don't think every team is going to be able to get 4 first-round draft picks for the likes of a Rudy Gobert, a guy that still can't play on the pick and roll. Like when I think of this move, what in the world were the Minnesota Timberwolves thinking?
I'm with you.
Wow.
I understand that, but they still got it.
I understand.
Or gave it.
I get it.
So, yes or no question.
Okay.
At the risk of pump the brakes, nobody gives the Nets what they want.
Why would you?
So, if Kevin Garnett,
Because that's not their only headache. Like, they still got to make a deal for Kyrie Irving.
Understood. So that's my point. If he has not been traded by the start of the season, does he play for the Nets?
No.
He will sit out.
Yes.
All right.
Yes. He will not play for the
Especially
Brooklyn
in the
Nets.
NBA, right? Because it's 82 games. Half these guys don't want to play till Christmas anyway.
I don't want to watch till Christmas.
Right. So it's easier.
I think
you miss what
20 games. You miss a quarter of the season.
Right.
Big deal.
You miss what DeAndre Hopkins is missing, 6 games. Oh my gosh. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's
But
substantial.
if you don't play the first 20, 25 games in the NBA, it's
Big
like
deal.
fair point.
Whatever.
No, it's a fair point. That's where it's headed to, though.
Yeah.
Right? Because again, every time you throw up the trade scenarios,
Well, it
you've got
works.
these potential roadblocks,
Yeah.
and the ability for teams to actually make the deal,
Stare down.
because of
It's
the
gonna be a stare
contracts. And Sean correctly pointed out, this contract that they will take on is massive, and Robert Sarver, if he makes this deal, the checkbook's out again.
Why did he sign that deal? That's what I don't understand about Kevin Durant. You got a no trade clause,
Yeah.
or you don't have a no
trade clause.
Dude, really? You're Kevin Durant and you signed that deal?
Yeah.
Like I don't understand that one, and that gives Brooklyn all the leverage in the world to be like, hey, look, we got you. So,
Yeah.
And they got to do what's right by them. They have to do what's right by them.
Because
So-
they're feeling jaded right now. They want to try to get back control. They want to get away from what we were talking about as far
Absolutely.
as players being the ones that call the shots. Because to hear Kyrie talk and say some of the things that he said, I'm like, wow, really? You feel that entitled that you can say some of those things? Seriously?
By the time we record the next episode of Training Gross, a lot of this will start to take shape.
Yes.
Because again, coming up this weekend, keep an eye on DeAndre Ayton and the Pacers, right? Because that could be the domino that gets this whole thing rolling, and we'll know that when we come together.
I don't know if
again,
Utah's done either.
Utah's not done. Can't be done with everything they got from Minnesota, to your point. All right, we'll step aside here on the other side. It's our third segment, and we're finally getting around to the National Football League. That's coming up on Train and Gross.
There you go.
Train and Gross.
Be sure to follow us on Twitter at Train and Gross. NFL now, B-Train. A couple things to get into.
Yep.
I have to adjust my update that I've been given for the last couple of weeks. I would tell everybody that Baker Mayfield and Jimmy Garoppolo are still
Bum, 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 bum. Breaking
with
news.
their respective teams.
Yeah.
No longer.
No.
Baker Mayfield traded to the Carolina Panthers this week. Breaking news.
Breaking news, but I think it's been something that's in the works for the last couple of months, Mike. I think they were playing a game of chicken between Baker Mayfield and the Cleveland Browns, which one was going to blink first. And I think Baker Mayfield, seeing that he had to go and try to compete for the starting job with Sam Darnold in Carolina, he had foregone like, I believe, $3 million, $3.5 million, and then put it on an incentive-laced deal to make this go forward. And the Cleveland Browns paid up, and the Carolina Panthers paid up, and they finally were able to get it done. This is something that we all knew was going to happen. It was just a matter of when. And I think finally Baker was like, enough. I don't want the questions being consistently asked, hey, if Deshaun Watson's not able to play, are you going to – he's like, absolutely not. He wanted no parts of Cleveland going forward.
Anytime he turned up at a charity golf tournament or whatever he was doing in the offseason, got the questions.
Yeah, he just got tired of it.
The deal's done, and what it is, it's a conditional fifth-round draft pick.
A number 1 overall pick, former. 2018, Mike. That's not very long ago.
That's not long ago at all. And Cleveland retains a good chunk of the salary on top of that. And Carolina, Cleveland, week 1 in the upcoming season.
And guess who was the number 3 quarterback taken while Baker Mayfield was number 1? Sam Darnold.
Sam Darnold.
How about that?
There you go.
What's his? What, you would know better than us, B-Train.
Huh.
What is he? I watch Sam Darnold and I'm like, damn, guy's got the arm, he's got the size,
Sam Darnold,
he's got the ability.
He's Ryan Fitzpatrick.
He just can't get it together.
He's Ryan Fitzpatrick. He's going to be a forever backup now for the rest of his career. That's what he is. He's a guy that's turnover prone. He's been that way since college. Knew him very well at USC. I mean, he gave us many gifts when he was in college, and we appreciate him and his donations to our victories. Thank you so very much, Sam Darnold. But he's not a guy that you can give him the keys to the car because he's going to wreck it. He's going to do something to wreck the car. If you give him the keys, he's like that 16-year-old, which I have one in my house. He's not getting the keys because I know you're going to do something dumb. And it's not like you are trying to do something dumb, but you're going to do something dumb. I can't give you the keys. And if you're Baker Mayfield, you're going in playing – you're trying to do a scorched earth tour because everybody has said, hey, you can't play anymore while you were hurt. They're saying that you're not a good leader because Odell Beckham and these guys didn't want to play with you, on and on and on. You're too slow, you're too short, all these different things. He's heard all of this, and he just finally had enough and said, hey, you know what? Screw the $3.5 million. I'll make it up. Just let me go out there and show what I can do and let's end this nonsense right now.
Ryan Fitzpatrick's on line one. He didn't like your analogy.
Might not, but
Ryan Fitzpatrick career, 223 touchdowns, 169 interceptions. I had to look it up. I didn't know.
That's Highland High School.
Highland High School alum.
Shout out.
Yeah.
Harvard. And
Harvard.
And in the NFL for longer than a lot of people probably expected when he got there.
Was it 16?
Came in 2005 and just wrapped it up 2021.
Hey, did you guys happen to check the Week 1 schedule in the National Football League?
That would be Carolina Panthers versus the Cleveland Browns.
Yes,
What I just
in
said.
Cleveland.
Yeah, he already
Love it.
said that.
Sorry,
He did say
I was reading.
Pump the brakes.
I should hit myself. Sorry
There you
about
go.
that. Yeah.
There
So
you
Ryan Fitzpatrick didn't like that analogy.
I mean, he might not like it, but that's what it is. I mean, no diss. Hey, I was considered a bust at one point in my career, so things work out if you stick with it, and it worked out pretty well for Ryan.
And I don't want to talk about Ryan Fitzpatrick, but I was just I looked it up just to make the. He threw for 35,000 yards in his career and completed over 60% of his passes.
He would go on like 4 or 5 week runs where he was just absolutely nails.
Out of this world.
And then he would have the 2 or 3 weeks, like you're saying, we're like, what the hell's going on? What was that?
Yeah, what was that? Like,
But it was everywhere he went. He'd have 3, 4, 5 games where you're going, man, that's a quality NFL starter right there. And then, boom, it'd fall off. So.
Think about this. He's got more wins versus Tom Brady than any other quarterback in the history of the game.
That's what happens when you play for Buffalo, Miami, and the Jets.
Yeah.
He had the cracks at him, and to your point, took advantage of it.
Look, he can say, I beat Tom Brady more than anybody. Now, Eli is the only one that can be like, yeah, but I got the 2 rings.
I got to
to
where it
show for
counts.
I got the hardware that says I beat him twice. You may have beat him a bunch of times. I just beat him 2 where it counted.
But you go back to that, because Sam Darnold was drafted the same year as Josh Rosen, right?
Baker Mayfield, all those guys. They were all the same
I'm just
draft
looking,
class.
going back to what we were talking about before with the USC, UCLA falling off. You look at 2 guys that were drafted top 10 and what their careers turned into.
You also know who was drafted 32 overall that year, too. A certain quarterback in Baltimore.
Lamar, I was going to say Lamar. All quiet, speaking of which, all quiet on the extension front for both Lamar and, of course, the local quarterback, QB1. Are we allowed to call him QB1, or is he under the same rules that DA is?
Yeah, he's got to be Kyler Murray. Right now, he's got to be Kyler Murray.
All right.
He's got to be Kyler Murray.
So all quiet on that front, and last I checked, they hadn't resolved issues with their starting center either. So
They're a mess, Mike.
more of the same.
It's a mess.
With the Arizona Cardinals.
Is there concern for Lamar, as we're going to just bounce around the league here, with Lamar
No.
yet?
No.
I know we talk about this a lot, but if you're a fan of the Ravens, I think you're starting to get a little worried about the fact that they can't get on the same page. No,
I don't think he's worried because he knows what the asking price is. The Baltimore Ravens know what the asking price is. All they have to do is just be like, hey, you ready? Okay, I'm ready. All right, cool. Let's make it happen. All it is Deshaun Watson plus $2 million.
plus $2 million. All probably fully guaranteed.
Fully guaranteed? Listen, what does Lamar Jackson have that Deshaun Watson doesn't? Oh, that would be an MVP trophy.
Right.
That means I was the best player in the entire league at one point. I've taken my team to the playoffs numerous times. Thank you so very much. So pay me. If you're going to give him that much money, you got to break bread with me. I mean, it's really that simple. There doesn't have to be a lot of back and forth. It's like, okay, that's my deal plus $2 million. Thank you.
And no word on what is going to happen in Cleveland in terms of suspension. Is it a full year? Is it most of the year?
It's going to be significant.
It's all indications it has to be because the NFLPA apparently broke off talks with the NFL because they didn't like the way it was headed.
Yep.
And that can only mean
a year.
That it was going to be a very, very long extension.
Yeah.
And, you floated an idea a couple weeks ago where you said, well, why don't the
trade
Browns
for Jimmy G?
Take a run at Jimmy Garoppolo?
There goes another pump the brakes move.
Oh, my goodness. But we already said that in the podcast, though. I said that in the podcast a couple weeks ago.
There it goes. Yeah.
Sorry, bro.
Deleting that one. Just going to go ahead and,
Pump the brake. I get it, but I also, if...
It's a win-win, Mike.
It is, but if you're the Browns, at some point, do you just throw your hands up and say, this is a lost year?
No, you can't do that. Because if you do that, then why did you sign Deshaun Watson in the first place? Was he just a tease? You get our hopes up to let us down again? I mean, then it's like more of the same.
It's Cleveland.
Right, but that's what I'm saying.
Cleveland.
It's like the most Cleveland thing you could do. You could sign Deshaun Watson to this record deal, and then he's not even able to play the first year, and you don't do anything to make the roster better.
But again, Cleveland knew that. That was a possibility because they structured the contract.
He only got $1 million. He's only losing $1 million.
He's only losing $1 million.
Right.
So they structured the contract knowing that was
anticipated.
a possibility.
Yes.
So,
but you still got to go play the games.
Understand.
And you still got to go entertain those people that are going to be in the seats.
I get it, but at some point, the future cost of all this becomes
it's a 1-year
astronomical.
Deal. It's a 1-year prove-it deal for Jimmy G. All you're doing is, okay, you can't have Deshaun Watson. We know that. So the next best thing is to get a prove-it quarterback on a prove-it deal. And you've got the requisite weapons like he had in San Francisco. We know when Jimmy G has weapons around him, he can do some things. He's taken the San Francisco 49ers to a Super Bowl and an NFC Championship game. So it's not like he can't play at all. I think it's the perfect situation if I'm Jimmy G. All I've got to do now is make sure I can throw the ball.
And this all would have to stem. They'd have to cut him, like you keep saying. They're going to have to cut him because if you're the Browns, you got nothing left to make this move to go get him. They're going to have to cut him.
No, they're just waiting on the San Francisco.
That's what I'm saying. They're going to have to wait for the 49ers to cut him because the Browns have nothing to go get him.
Yeah.
Same thing with Seattle, right? Seattle is a team that obviously should be in the market for a Jimmy G. They're clearly not going to trade him just in division rival with the Seahawks. So Seahawks would have to hope that they cut him. So let me ask you this. Why would the 49ers cut him?
Because you have a franchise quarterback and you don't want that drama hanging around your franchise quarterback who you're trying to get ready for the season. Who, if you give him the starting job and Jimmy G's still on the roster, you don't think he's going to be looking over his shoulder every time he makes a bad throw, every time he makes a poor decision. He goes out and has a bad preseason game. You don't think he's going to be thinking about the guy that he just replaced? Looking over his shoulder like, are they going to put him in? Are they going to put him in? You don't want to do that to a young quarterback.
Let me ask you this:
that.
would that vibe for the young quarterback still be there? That same energy you're talking about if they cut Jimmy G, a guy that just took this roster to the NFC Championship game, and then you've got this rookie having that bad game, missing Deebo Samuel when he's wide ass open, not making the correct read. You know what I mean? So is that going to be that same energy? He's going to be looking over his shoulder at the rest of the locker room, going,
no.
These guys
because there's nobody behind him. If Jimmy G is gone, there's nobody that took this team to 2 NFC Championship games and a Super Bowl.
You telling me nobody in that locker room is going to be side-eyeing this dude who
they can side-eye all he wants, but he's not going to be looking at that guy. He's not going to be worried about that guy on the roster.
Monday through Friday.
Yes.
So there's the football aspect of it, which we've been talking about, but the other side, the business side.
Yeah.
If they do that, it's a $27 million cap hit.
You knew this was coming.
No, you knew
way.
it was coming, but I'm saying it's the business side. You have to still deal with it.
They're holding out hope. They did the same thing with the Browns and Baker Mayfield.
But everybody that's in the market, like Beatrice keeps saying, knows that you have to do something.
Exactly.
They're waiting.
So,
it's the waiting
exactly.
game.
So it's the.
And I don't feel bad for them. They made their own bet last year when they gave up all that draft capital to move up for Trey Lance. When they made their own bet.
Hey.
You know what I mean? So I don't feel bad for them at all.
To your point, everybody knows, but if you had a popular vote, it's almost, I see all the stupid signs around town now. We got an election coming up, apparently. If you had a secret ballot in the 49ers locker room, and you could have,
Jimmy G's getting voted in.
who's your starting quarterback?
Jimmy G.
The guy that's taking me to 2 NFC
Yeah.
championship games.
If you're Debo Samuel and you're on the last year of your contract and you're desperate for a new one, you're telling me you don't want the guy that's proven he can get you the football and get you those numbers?
If I'm Joey Bosa and I'm that defensive line,
Right.
I absolutely want
I'm not
Jimmy
trying
G.
to pitch shutouts every week. No, get me.
Or have to pitch shutouts
Right.
just to win, just to be competitive. I want a guy that's going to get me the ball back. Or if I give them the ball back, they're going to do something
Yeah,
with it.
if you did the Survivor secret ballot, right, go behind the wall,
No, it's Jimmy
write
G.
the name
It's
down that
Jimmy
you
G.
want on the piece of paper,
Jimmy
show it to the
G.
camera, right?
And that's
it's
so-
going to be Jimmy G.
And that's so funny because the 49ers are working overtime from a PR standpoint. Matt Maiocco, who I think we've all
I
spoken
love
to.
Matt. You know, we had him on our show all the time.
Exactly. If you follow him on social media, some of the columns he's written about how Trey Lance is working overtime. Trey Lance is gaining the confidence of the front office.
He's getting prepped up by Steve Young. Like all those stories have been out there in the last 2 months.
Yeah.
Jimmy Garoppolo's made $140 million in his career.
And got 2 Super Bowls.
Jimmy G.
Listen,
Plus-
he's got 2 win. He's got 2 with Tom Brady. Then went to his own and got his own.
Plus,
He didn't win it, but he got to his own.
he's got his Subway commercials.
Subway commercial,
true.
and he's a very handsome dude.
I think we've discussed that.
He's winning at life. Yeah.
Very much so.
Regardless of what the 49ers do with him, he's winning at life.
That's the question we should have. Like, what sports athlete is winning?
Just winning every day he
Overall.
wakes up. Yeah.
Steph Curry's hard to beat.
Yeah, that's he's
That
Yeah.
the year that he just had, think
Right.
about it now. All-Star Game MVP, Western Conference Finals MVP, Finals MVP. You go home to Aisha every night. You got 3 beautiful
cute kids. Yeah.
Beautiful.
and you're Steph Curry. You got 2 max deals under your belt, and you're going to see every penny of both of them. It's kind of hard not to.
He's doing okay.
It's good to be Steph Curry right now.
Real quickly before we get to whatever's left to pump the brakes here coming up.
Yeah, I got to look at a few things.
Two notes I want to get to real quick. And one, again, going back to the Bertrand Berry show we did so long ago.
Long
at least
time
it seems
ago.
like Will
Long,
Sullivan.
long time ago.
Will Sullivan used to come on the show. And one
Will
of his
the Thrill.
proteges was Devin Allen.
Yeah.
Devin Allen is making a name for himself. He signed a contract with the Philadelphia Eagles.
Wow.
And I think they view him as a Christian McCaffrey type. We'll see how that
I like
goes.
it.
Devin Allen qualified for the World Track and Field Championship in the 110-meter hurdles. He's having
Ran the second fastest time, I believe.
He's
in the
having his
history.
best year
Jeez.
ever on the track. Here's a kid that played at Brophy College Prep, went up to Oregon on a football scholarship and said, nuts to this, I'm going to focus on track.
Yep.
Qualified for the Olympics.
Yep.
So, I mean, he's compete. This is not like, sometimes you hear about athletes who decide to try track and field and do it on a whim and do it for, I think I'm fast so I can go do it, and then
Right.
it really doesn't mature. This is a guy that's competed at and has been successful at
Yeah.
the highest level. So before he gets to training camp,
Yeah.
he will run in the track and field world championships in the 110 hurdles, and he looks like a machine.
I mean, Mike, a 12.97, that is absolutely moving in the 110 hurdles. Think about that. Now, that's a fast 100. He did it in a 110. Like, he ran a 110. He ran 10 extra yards or 10 extra meters, 12.97.
To your point, I think it was the third fastest ever.
Oh, it's
Whatever
third
it
fast.
is.
Okay, third
But
fastest ever.
When you're having a conversation that says fastest ever,
Yeah, if the word ever's on it.
yeah,
And it's not even your main sport. Like, you got to go report to
Yeah.
camp after that.
yeah. So we'll see, but we wish him the best.
Absolutely.
The other thing too, keeping it local, and this is dipping back to college football, but and I know we have our certain thoughts about the University of Texas Longhorns, but shout out to Bijan Robinson, a kid that played high school football down at South Point Catholic. Bijan Robinson, running back now for the Texas Longhorns, was named the Big 12 preseason Offensive Player of the Year,
Wow, good for him.
which I think goes to demonstrate, kind of his work ethic because
Yeah.
he's coming off a bad injury.
Yep.
And even with all of that, they're voting him in.
Tremendous honor.
And say whatever you will, it's still the Big 12.
Yes.
And it's still football.
Still a big deal.
At the highest level.
It's still a big deal. And until they officially make the move, this is where they're at. So Oklahoma's still there. All the teams that are still affiliated with the Big 12 are still there. So to win that, I think is still a huge deal for him, and it would be a major feather in his cap.
And for those of us that watch high school football here in Arizona,
Yes, we do.
and remember Bijan and everything that he did,
Yeah.
and talk to the reporters from down in Tucson, people question, well, why Texas? Like, and we've talked about that on this show.
Mm-hmm.
Texas has not been the strongest program of late.
And they recruit heavily in Texas.
And Bijan Robinson picked Texas, and he could have gone anywhere. It came down to Texas and Ohio State.
Yeah, wow.
And he selected Texas. And according to the report, it's like, look, one of the hardest working, level-headed kids you're ever going to meet, didn't let any of that go to his head, and really felt like he knew what he wanted to do, and this is the way he was going to get there. And clearly, he's taking advantage of it.
Good for him.
Shout out to Bijan Robinson.
Good for
We'll
him.
keep an eye on him as this college football season gets underway.
No doubt.
Sean Crespin might have to take a longer break here as he's retooling the pump the brakes portion of the program. I think I messed it up once and you messed it up once.
But I got something to help him out, though.
Okay,
I
good.
got a few stories to help him out.
All right,
there we
good.
go. But for that, Sean, we sincerely apologize. So we'll step aside here, come back, pump the brakes and dad jokes on Train and Grose. Welcome back in Train and Grose. Final segment of the podcast episode 78. And just to close the loop, fellas, the number of minutes listened to this fine tune on the way back on vacation?
0.
0.
Wow.
I'm going to need you to send me a link at some point.
I will.
And then I'll somehow just work it into the...
Don't even say anything. Just slide it in there.
Yeah. And you know what's going to happen?
The DMs, you just
people
slide
won't
in.
even, Karen, I don't think she ever listens to Steve in the podcast. She won't recognize it,
Yeah.
but we'll be driving down the road, and what will happen? Just what we're doing right now.
Yeah.
That's what's
bob in
going to
your
happen.
Mm-hmm.
Driving down the I-40, godforsaken highway, by the way.
Okay. I'm going to give you statements from the world of sports. You tell me if you're pumping the brakes on that particular statement or if you're rolling with it.
All right.
Talked a little bit about Baker Mayfield today, obviously. Pump the brakes or not, when you look at the division, the NFC South, Tom Brady last year, maybe 2 max. Jameis Winston, Marcus Mariota, those are your starting quarterbacks. And now Baker Mayfield. This potentially is the best landing spot for Baker outside of Cleveland for this portion of his career. Pump the brakes or not?
I'm pumping the brakes. I really felt like Seattle was a better option, but I think for him to be in that division, I think it didn't matter where he played. Like, he was going to just try to rip up the entire league because he's just pissed off right now. He's pissed because he was let go in Cleveland. He thought he had done everything he could. He played injured, and they still had no love for Baker Mayfield when it was time to go. And they brought in a guy that had all these troubles and gave him a record deal. If there's anything that says we don't want you anymore and we don't think that you're our guy, I don't think the Cleveland Browns could have screamed it any louder with that contract that they gave Deshaun Watson. So he's no matter where he landed, he was going to be seeing red the entire season.
Yeah, so I'm not pumping the brakes because, to your point, B-Train, any place but Cleveland was good.
It's true.
Any place but Cleveland.
I just
And obviously it was very limited given the timing and everything like that.
Sure.
But look, to your point, I think you're making, Sean, the NFC South. If Carolina plays their cards right, probably not this year, but it's maneuverable in there. There's some guys. The NFC is.
But here's a Baker Mayfield. My expectations for Baker Mayfield are very low, and a lot of that and maybe that's not fair, but a lot because you were in a dumpster fire in Cleveland. But when he was asked to carry the football team, you go back. He couldn't do it. You go back to 2019. That'd be year 2. So maybe I'm being unfair again, but 22 touchdowns to 21 interceptions. He couldn't do it. It wasn't until you had that 2-headed monster at running back. You brought in Stefanski, right?
Brought in Odell.
You brought in.
You had as many weapons as you could have, possibly.
You did not have to. He didn't have to win games very often with his arm. You were running the football. You were running the football. So now he's in a situation again with Matt Rule where they're going to ask him to win football games with his arm.
Well,
I honestly don't think he's that guy.
No, he's not that guy, but I don't think they're going to – well, it depends because I think –
Is McCaffrey going to be available?
His success depends on Christian McCaffrey.
Right.
If Christian McCaffrey can take the pressure off of Baker Mayfield can have a hell of a season.
Look, Christian McCaffrey is amazing, right?
When healthy.
There's no doubt about it.
When healthy.
But it's not the same type of amazing, right? It's not like they pounded the rock in Cleveland with that two-headed monster, and it was Nick Chubb,
Yep.
right?
Nick Kareem Hunt.
Kareem Hunt.
Yep.
You ask Christian McCaffrey to do a lot out of the backfield in the passing game as well in Carolina. It's a different type of leaning on the running back, if that makes sense.
Well, it's different because you don't have two, you have one. But I think with the two-headed monster in Cleveland, neither one of those guys were great pass receivers.
That's my point.
With Christian McCaffrey, you got the total package. You got a guy that can run between the tackles and a guy that can make you miss in the phone booth against the linebacker. You put him in a matchup against the linebacker, I'm taking those chances all day. I can't wait to get him the ball. The only problem with Christian McCaffrey is his availability. Can he stay on the field for 16 games? And thus far in his career, the answer is no. Or 17 games now, the answer is no.
But from the Baker standpoint,
he needs Christian McCaffrey.
He's got to have him. But again, Christian McCaffrey's game leans more towards a quarterback winning with his arm than Chubb and company in Cleveland.
Maybe. Okay.
And going back to what he did or didn't do in Cleveland, while you guys were going through that, I went and found a text I sent you over 2 years ago.
Okay.
About Baker Mayfield.
Wow.
We were talking about
Talk
it.
about keeping
and I
receipts.
remember it.
Yeah.
Man,
I love it.
I'll clean out the text
I
file.
love it.
But something to the effect of he threw an interception and on the play hung Odell Beckham Jr. out to dry.
Yeah.
And Odell got hurt.
Yeah.
Right? So that's kind of his MO. Like playing hurt, trying to do too much, forcing throws, like not playing within himself, like knowing who you are. And no matter where you are, whether you're in Cleveland, Carolina, if he doesn't change that, it's not going to work.
I'm gonna piggyback off that one more. Baker Mayfield makes the Panthers a playoff team in this really not stacked NFC.
No,
still not.
So you think so? Honestly, here's the issue with that question. We know Tampa Bay is going to be.
They're going to win the division.
They're going to win the division. We know the New Orleans Saints with Jameis Winston is probably going to be the number 2 seed. They've got enough defense and they've got enough offense to get that done. Alvin Kamara, Jameis Winston, Olave at the receiver. They're going to be a formidable offensive team.
Yep.
There's not going to be 3 teams out of the NFC South in the playoffs.
No.
So if I already think Tampa Bay is going to be one and I think New Orleans is going to be the other one, how could you possibly have the Tampa Bay or the Carolina Panthers as the 3rd team?
Pump the brakes. Carolina was 5-12 last year.
Yeah, they were.
Are you telling me, not you personally, but if you were to not pump the brakes on that question, that Baker Mayfield gives you
5
7
wins.
or 8 more wins? Because you got to get to.
If they're 5, then you need.
All right, so
7, 12.
5 more, 6 more.
5 to 7.
Yeah.
No.
Baker Mayfield does not do that.
No, he does not give you 5.
So what does that do for Matt Rule? That'd be year 3 of 3 consecutive losing seasons.
They better get.
And they have invested in the quarterback position heavy in back-to-back years.
They better go 9-8.
Just be on that right side.
You better be on the right side of 500 because if they're on the wrong side, I think he's out of there.
I'd agree with that. The Baker thing's going to be interesting.
It's going to be a circus.
He's a better quarterback than Sam Darnold.
He is.
But is he going to do Baker things that he did in Cleveland?
Yeah. So this one comes from B-Train.
Okay.
I'm gonna start with you, Grose, because I think I have an idea where B-Train lands on this one. Major League Baseball right now, this time of the calendar, you got the NFL season really not doing anything. This is the 1 month really where the NFL is just not a thing.
There's nothing other than
the
baseball.
NBA's done, NHL's done. You got the NHL draft today, but really it's baseball. This is America's pastime. It's time to shine.
They get a whole month.
Pump the brakes or not, even having said all that, baseball still struggles to uphold the sports world on its own.
I ain't pumping the brakes. It's not, and it's been a slow. If you're a baseball fan, I grew up in a baseball town and enjoyed going to baseball games. My brother and I would, in our room when the Tigers played West Coast games, we'd have on WJR, the great voice of the Great Lakes, listen to Ernie Harwell and Paul Carey call baseball games from exotic locales like Oakland Alameda Coliseum, Angel Stadium.
Right.
None of that.
Yeah.
None of that.
Yeah.
I remember my grandmother moved in. She had some health issues, and I used to go into her room with her, and we'd watch Tiger games together on weekend afternoons.
That's
and
dope.
None of that, and so I'm 50-some years old right now, and that's not happening with kids. Like we talked about, when did you think this town turned into a Cardinals town. It's when you saw little kids running around in Larry Fitzgerald jerseys.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So if you use that same thing, I don't see kids running around in Diamondbacks hats and jerseys.
Nope.
For my friends that have young kids or grandkids, I just saw somebody who lives here. Their kid was sporting a Dodger cap in a picture they posted. So
That's
no,
brutal. That's brutal.
and particularly now, how bad the Diamondbacks are in this town. Where's your where are you going to care? If you're the Dodgers, maybe the Yankees are good again. You're Houston Astros, but baseball's dying on the vine, and they can't figure it out.
Yeah, I'm not pumping the brakes either. And the thing that really concerns me about baseball is when you think of young kids, the generation that my son is in, the 16 and unders, they don't even like music to be more than 3 minutes long. They want music to be a song to be 2.5 minutes. Their attention span is like this. So when you talk about a game that doesn't have a time limit, a game that could go on for 4 to 5 hours, a game that you really don't want to watch on TV, you'd rather watch in person. And then you basically have the haves and the have-nots. When you talk about baseball, there's 30 teams in baseball. There's really about 10 teams that really have a legit shot to win the World Series. There's not a lot of interest nationwide around baseball. And even in the cities where they do have a chance, you're still fighting other elements. So I think, to Mike's point, baseball's dying a slow death here. And I think, though they have a month to themselves, I think it's in reverse. I think it's going to expose them for being the weak link that they are, because there's not going to be a lot of juice for the All-Star game. There's not going to be a lot of juice for this stretch run. I mean, you've got some, as you said, Sean, there's some guys that are doing some historic things right now in baseball, and nobody gives a damn.
Shohei Ohtani might be the most intriguing baseball player in decades.
Aaron Judge, what he's doing, I mean, he's already got 30 home runs before the All-Star break.
You can go to a park and watch Shohei Ohtani and Mike Trout in the same day,
and they're going to get
and nobody cares. They can't win a baseball game together, even despite having those two. But nobody cares.
Mike, he had 8 RBI in a game last week, and they lost that game.
I know.
8 RBI. Shohei Ohtani had 8 RBI, and they lost. How do you have two of the most transcendent players in the game on the same team, and they can't win to save their lives?
Yeah.
Watch a game, whether you're.
I can't on TV.
Well, I'm just saying, turn a game on and look at the makeup of the crowd.
What crowd?
Well, such as it is. But in Houston, if you watch an Astros game, people are going. Dodgers will still lead the league in attendance, but look at the crowd. It's older. It's a much older crowd than any of the other sports.
It's either grandparents and there's kids with their mitts.
Yeah, right. I read a report a couple years ago. I tried to pull it up right now on the fly. I couldn't find it, but there was a study done of the average age of the national broadcast of Major League Baseball, and at one point it was 52 years old, and then 3 or 4 years later it was that exact same number plus 3 or 4 years, and it was just this one demographic. It was like the last generation of baseball, and it's just aging out, if you will.
Yep.
It's interesting.
It's sad.
Yeah, it's interesting.
I use that word again, just what we talked about.
Am I out of line? Here, pump the brakes or not on this one. Am I out of line to call baseball a niche sport at this point?
No, you're not out of line. That's exactly what it is. If you grew up with it, yeah, you love it. If you're a Fringe fan like myself, you can take it or leave it.
I would still pump the brakes on that.
Okay.
I'd still pump the brakes. There's issues, there's problems, but I don't think it's a niche sport. And part of that is, you've got a media behind this sport that's going to give it to you, that they're driving it.
Sure.
You don't have to look hard to find a baseball game. To your point, you might not want to watch it, but I know if I'm in the man cave at B-Train's house and you put on ESPN and it's the Royals and the Rangers, you're like, click. But it's there. They're giving it to you. Yeah. Every Saturday, it's on Fox.
If I want to take a nap on a Saturday morning, I'll put that on.
Right. So it's not there yet. And the numbers are ridiculous. You look at the TV money they're getting. It's still
how? But there's nobody watching you.
The regional contracts are huge.
The regional contracts are astronomical. The Diamondbacks was over $1 billion.
I think it's because, think about it. Right now, you're at a sport. You own a sports bar, right? Let's say Train Station expands to own a sports bar.
Okay, all right. I like that.
This month, what's on your TV?
Nothing but baseball.
There you go. So those local contracts are huge.
Okay, but go back. So yesterday, I'm watching TV. I get home fairly early. I'm watching ESPN. ESPN 1, not ESPN 2, not ESPN News,
Not the Ocho.
not ESPN U and all this other stuff. ESPN. You know what they had on yesterday?
Cornhole.
I was going to say that. You beat me to it.
Close. They had the rebroadcast of the hot dog eating contest.
Oh, no.
Oh,
they didn't.
yeah.
Spoiler alert, Joey Chestnut won.
Again,
With
for
a-
the 15th time.
With a cast on his leg. And some dude trying to protest next to him. He took him out with a...
Speaking of which, I watched Cornhole the other night on ESPN.
Stop it.
Jake Cutler won the celebrity.
Hey, put it on and just give it one segment. You'll be hooked.
I watched it. I click.
I could now maybe it was because it was during the pandemic, right? But during the pandemic,
Hell no, it was last Saturday.
no. But listen, I found myself during the pandemic. So this is about a year and a half ago.
Stop it.
Watching like 3-4 segments. It took
Stop.
Lindsay getting home from work to go, "What are you doing?" For me to realize, like, yeah, what the hell am I doing?
Yeah, no. I saw that. I saw that with Jay Cutler. I'm like, no.
Did he win?
Yeah. He won the celebrity, so now he goes to, they did regional setups. I'm getting a
He was
side eye.
dialed in. Look at him. There you go.
Talk about, can I get a niche sport?
Hold up.
Yeah.
Can I get a niche sport?
Could I get a niche sport for 200, please, Al?
He beat Zach, what's his name? The tight end from the Bears. His tight end. They played each other.
Yeah.
Wow.
Zach. What was his name? He's doing country music now.
Jeez.
Is that right?
Big man.
You really watched this. You like
Dude.
took notes.
Oh, I did. I didn't think we'd get to it, though. Good thing I did that.
Real quick.
You know
'cause
how-
major headlines, especially here locally as well. Brittany Griner. Brittany Griner today pled guilty to bringing hash oil into Russia, telling the judge that she had done so, quote, inadvertently while asking the court for mercy. Maybe, and I don't pretend to play a lawyer here on the radio or the podcast, but to me, in Russia, is that the right way to go about it?
Apparently it is. Breaking news, Russia doesn't have the same system of justice that we do, meaning innocent until proven guilty.
Right.
So apparently, that's the way you begin this whole process rolling. I've read a recap, a review of it. It's very counterintuitive. On the one hand, and we talked about this, she is clearly caught up in something much bigger than what she is accused of.
Political pawn.
Yes.
She's a political pawn. On
Yes.
the other hand, and I'm going to say this, and like you hear these stories, take her out of it for a second. When somebody tries to go through the airport security and they got a gun in their bag, that's you got a problem when that happens.
You got a big problem.
And you cannot say, oh, gee, I forgot that I had my gun when I tried to get on this airplane. So if you're rolling into a foreign country, you got illegal substances in your bag, you got a problem. Now, maybe if all the political stuff wasn't going on, it's not dealt with the same way.
I think it is, though. Because of who it is. It's Russia.
Yeah.
Russia and the U.S., we don't get along so hot.
Yeah.
They look
And-
at this situation like, we got one.
We absolutely got one, and we're gonna hold your feet to the fire. We're gonna make this as public as we can,
Yeah.
because we want to bring as much attention to it, because we want there to be some sort of negotiation. And there's the old adage: you don't negotiate with terrorists. Not that we're saying Russians are terrorists, but when you talk about this situation, they understand that it's not going to go away easy. She had to have some sort of admission.
Agreed.
The only way that this was going to get worked out is that she formally said, I had drugs in Russia.
Yeah. Plus, and again, I'm not going to pretend like I haven't seen footage of this or anything, but if she was caught basically in a situation where you couldn't do anything, you can't deny it, then the only route you probably have is to say, hey, yeah, guilty, didn't mean to, wasn't intentional, as she said.
Yeah, they weren't gonna let the back channels handle this. They
Right.
wanted this front and center because this is
A lot of
something
mileage.
that
Last one before we get to the world famous dad jokes.
You know how I like my polls.
So those that have watched this
Easy.
program before have seen that candles are a lot of times a big experience here at train station, right?
right now it is.
Candles are, it always smells great in here, by the way. We appreciate what you do, Beatrice.
Thank you so much.
General Mills, they're releasing a whole line of official candles that smell like your favorite breakfast cereal. There are 5 candles that we know of. Tell me, pump the brakes or not, if you're going to give these a shot. Lucky Charms. I was going to do it for you. Cocoa Puffs.
Pump the brakes.
What? Cocoa Puff smells amazing. Honey Nut Cheerios.
I'd buy that.
All right.
Yeah, I'd buy that.
Huh? It's honey. It's nuts.
Cheerios?
It's delicious.
I love Honey Nut Cheerios. I don't want to smell them.
You want to smell like it?
No, I
I know what I'm getting. Beach
Okay, the last one's going to be a winner. I know it. But first, how about Tricks?
don't. They're for kids.
Silly rabbit.
The last one, and this one is a winner. I'm buying this one. A candle that smells like Cinnamon Toast Crunch.
I'd buy that one too.
Come on now.
You know you want
He
it.
does. He's pausing.
Pump the brakes.
Oh, come on.
Not gonna happen.
I'm doing 2 out of the 5.
Now, according to General Mills, they claim they are the perfect, they quote, perfect at-home accessory for any cereal lover. But you kind of need to be a diehard fan if you want your whole house to smell like Tricks, I would guess, right? That's
Silly rabbit.
all right. Target, by the way. Go to your local Target if you would like to give those a shot. All
He's
right.
thinking about it now. 'Cause
He is.
He
Cinnamon
does
Toast
candle
Crunch.
shopping at Target.
Cinnamon Toast Crunch has got him. It's got him. That's
Or Honey Nut Cheerio.
That's the only one I'd go with, by the way. Cinnamon Toast Crunch.
Not
Out of
Honey
those
Nut
5.
Cheerio?
Nah, no Honey Nut Cheerio.
I loved Honey Nut Cheerios back in the day, but I don't want to smell it right now.
You guys know how this works. Time for B-Train's Dad Joke of the Week. There is a grading system here on the program. No matter what, after he delivers the joke, he's going to get one of these. It's a good dad joke, and here's some laughter. If it's above and beyond, we're all going to tell our friends, right? It's the standing ovation is what he gets, but there is that chance where it just doesn't land. And he gets one of those. Dad jokes are tricky sometimes, you know.
Tricks are for kids, Sean.
Hit you with one. All right, B-Train. Take it away.
All right, here we go. I just watched a documentary about beavers. It's the best damn show I ever saw.
That one's predictable, but it's not awful. Didn't make me cringe. It was a good one.
I got to admit, when he first started with it, I was
like, wait a minute.
Where are we going?
Family program, sir.
You had your finger on the beep,
I
the
did.
dump button.
Yeah, I was going to have to hit him.
Hold up.
Some technical difficulties.
Yeah.
Okay.
My favorite is still the one about nuts. Or no, excuse me. What was
It's a
it?
family
Under
show.
a buck. Under a buck. That's what it was. It was about nuts.
A family show, Sean.
Hold up.
You did it to yourself.
I did.
Wait.
That was good.
That's going to do it for episode 78 of Train and Grose. Thanks to the person that helped me at Bosa Donuts. You are
Yeah.
The real MVP.
our show
You need to go
MVP
back and
today.
find out her name so we can give her credit properly.
Yeah. Maybe
Next-
give her a little extra something on the side for the ambiance of those.
Next time.
Yeah.
I found there was I never knew this Bosa existed.
Wow.
And so I was driving from here to there, or from there to here apparently.
From there to
and
here.
stumbled
Okay.
across it and got wonderful service and got garnishes on our apple fritters. But that's going to do it. We'll see you next time on Train and Grose.
We'll holla.